In the name of Allah, the most beneficent and the most merciful. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Dear students, I welcome you in Pakistan International School TAIF's virtual learning system. And as you know, this is biology class for grade second year. Dear students, in this lecture number 30, we will see some more behaviors regarding chapter 19 of biology second year, that is behavior. Before we have studied innate behavior, and in this we have studied different types like oriental behavior and non-oriental behavior. Today we will see another type that is called learning behavior. And learning behavior, we will start with that. Just a review of the previous lecture, that we are studying behavior. It means the scientific study of how animals behave, and that branch is called ethology. As we know, we have studied actually not two but three types of behavior. Innate behavior, we have discussed, that is developmentally fixed in our body, in the individuals, whatever the individual is. Today we will see learned behavior or learning, that is the process throughout the life of the learning, and it is also having different types. And then we will see social behavior. So if we see the types of learning, there are lots of different types of learning, in which habituation, imprinting, classical conditioning, and then we are having somehow just related classical conditioning, that is trial and error learning, that is also called instrumental conditioning. Then we are having latent learning, and then insight learning. So let's talk about them one by one. So first of all, we will see learned behavior. Which learned behavior? Habituation. Habituation means to become like habitual of any behavior. So this is the type of behavior in which animals lose sensitivity to stimulus after repeated exposure with no reward and punishment. So actually beneficial. It allows organisms to focus more strongly on stimulus with actual positive or negative effects. So in habituation or habitual behavior, what's going on, like the animals learns to ignore a repeated or irrelevant stimulus, and these animals have learned by repeated harmless encounters that humans are no more dangerous to them and behaves accordingly. We will see in the example also, that is not only in humans but that is also common in animals as well. So for example, if we see buffaloes and cows in the street city and squirrels in the street parks, so first of all, they get scared and they just hide uh, under some support. But later on, they just get to know about that the humans are no more um, harmful for them. So they just ignore that stimulus of coming of human beings anywhere, and they move all around. So it's very a common example. We can see a new sound in our environment, such as a new ringtone, may initially draw our attention to even more distracting, but after some time, what we see, just it comes again and again. So this diminish the effects of the response, and we get habitual of that one. That is very, very common in human life as well, that we can have some we are habitual of listening some sounds like has of our air conditioner for all the time, so we just ignore after some time that stimulus, as well as some noises or um, like some bell ringings, or like in our life we are having different like pattern or of the behavior of habituation. Like for example, like human dresses in clothing. So the stimulus clothing creates this appears from our nervous system, and we can became unaware of it, like we are going through this normal process in our daily basis, that we ignore any continual stimulus. A very good example is of habituation is prairie dogs, which give alarm calls when mammals and large birds or snakes approach to them. Individual of prairie dogs, so what they do, they particularly susceptible to becoming food for a coyote, hawk, rattlesnake, but in a group they can be well defended, so they make alarms for that. But in case of humans, when prairie dogs towns are located near trails used by humans, like the places where this prairie dog just make their burrows over there, so giving alarm calls every time a person walks is a wastage of time and energy as well. In the start they do just for some in some time for some time, but later on they ignore this stimulus of coming for moving the human beings around them. That is going to be, we can say, the form of adaptation in this context. So this is very, very important adaptation for not only for animals but for human beings also. Let's talk about the next one, that is imprinting. Imprinting, like chasing the footsteps of others. So that is very, very familiar and very common in birds mostly. So imprinting is a specialized form of learning that occurs during the brief period of young animals when they hatch, or especially in the birds when they hatch from the eggs. For example, ducks imprinting on their mothers. So it is a form of learning in which what happened, the animal fixes its attention on the first object which they see, that is usual, auditory, or whatever that is. So we can say that time period, or that brief time period, which is very, very important for the imprinting behavior, for adapting that one, that is critical period. So young animals, especially the birds, they go through this critical period where after they follow the organisms present during this period. So that is very important as well regarding the birds behavior. So regarding this, experiments and studies are going to be done by lots of scientists, but here in 1930s, Conrad Lorenz, he just performed an experiment, and he kept some like eggs of gray-legged geese into the incubator, and after hatching the eggs from incubator, um, uh, their first a few hours they spent, these geese spent with the Lawrence rather than with their own mother, geese mother. So whatever this Lawrence did at the time, like these all goslings, they started to do the same thing, and like they are going to be imprint the same behavior as the Lawrence did. So it means the first critical hours, the first critical period after the hatching of the birds, that is very, very important to adopt that imprinting behavior. So that is not important that the mother of that geese is present over there. Any organism or a human or any instrument, if it is present over there, so they follow the same prints of the person, and like he performs the same activities. So that is actually if we see that imprinting and habituation differences, so we can see that a rapid form of learning, imprinting is very rapid form of learning during the critical period of time, and it is present in mostly birds and ducklings also, which follow their mothers. So if we just see habituation, that is an animal learns not to respond to the stimulus without punishment and reward. We don't give any punishment or reward, but the animals learn with the repeated activity of that stimulus. Dogs stop barking. That is an example. Familiar people entering the house. So horses become like when any familiar person just come into the house, the dog stop barking. They don't bark at the time. So horses become habituated to the city and ignore cars and noisy streets because they are reared or they are grown up in that places where these situations are in their habituation. So they just ignore all these circumstances. As well as imprinting is, we can say imprinting is irreversible. Irreversible. So if we just talk about, because that is just through the critical period, if the critical period have been passed, so that is throughout the life, that behavior. And habituation is a reversible behavior. Like if the situation has been gone, so that can be reversible. The same stimulus, if sometime the same stimulus is given to that animal, so they will respond again, and then they can attain the same process of habituation. So let's talk about classical conditioning. Classical conditioning, like here we give conditions to that animal or to that organisms. So classical conditioning are also called Pavlovian conditioning, because Pavlov was the scientist who just studied over this behavior. That is the learning through association, and was discovered by Pavlov, Russian physiologist. So in simple terms, we can say that two stimuli are linked together to produce new learned behavior in person or an animal, that is through condition. So Pavlov, if we see this experiment, so in 1890, that scientist Ivan Pavlov studied different processes on the salivation of the dogs. When he made observation, the dog began to salivate before the food arrived, for example, at the side of the food tray, and sound the assistance of food steps, or there can be another condition of the ringing of the bell. So like he gave lots of conditions for that um, the bell, meat, and etc. for the salivation of the dog. So if we see through this experiment, so um, he gave first ringing of the bell, that is unconditioned, we can say ringing of the bell, that is an unconditioned stimulus, and the dog doesn't salivate. Okay, so that is also called neutral stimulus. And what happened, no notable response means the dog didn't salivate. And then we didn't like, actually these are not the conditions. So what are the conditions? Both when they are given together. So then we see that meat is given, but the bell is not at the time rang. So that is also unconditioned stimulus, that is called US. So here is a salivation, because that is the habit of dog to just salivate, or once he just see meat or meat powder like that. So that is unconditioned response, like that is the natural response of that. So what happened during the conditions? So first of all, like And the bell began as a neutral stimulus, so itself didn't produce here any salivation. However, that by pairing the bell with a stimulus that did produce the salivation or response, the bell was um, what we can say, the able to acquire the ability to trigger the salivation response. So what we have done, we at the time Pavlov provide first the bell rings, and then he provided the meat at the same time, and that is also unconditioned response. But by looking at the meat, just the dog salivated. So that is during the condition. So what happened after this one, when several times, this is done several times, when the wings the bell ring, so the dog is provided by the meat or the meat powder, so the dog started to salivate. But after several attempts, what happened, just the bell started to ring and the meat is not provided, but whenever the bells just started to ring, the dog salivate, whether the meat is present or not. So this is the conditioned response, we can say the CR here, in which the dog has respond just to the bell, not to the meat, because both are conditioned for one another. So that is the conditioned stimulus. Now the bell is a conditioned stimulus, but when it will be provided, when it will be rung, the dog knows now that the meat will be provided to that. So when the bell started to ring, so the dog started to salivate just to attain or just to have a meat, but actually the meat was not to be provided. So that is called classical conditioning, means uh, both of the things or one thing is conditioned with the other, like that is provided with the condition. So there is the response, conditioned response. Then we will see operant conditioning, that is also known as trial and error learning. Like the person trial by chance, or sometimes their errors are produced over there, so they give the specific response. So that occurs when an animal connects its behavior with a particular response. Which type of response we'll discuss in this experiment, which is done by B.F. Skinner, and he trained the rats to push lever to obtain food to avoid painful shocks. So the animals, we train the animals by operant conditioning, like instrumental conditioning. We give some instruments as well as trial and error. The animals are just having some trials and some errors sometimes. So and the learning can be reversed or forgotten after just moving out of this condition. So we will see the Skinner's box or Skinner's experiment, that Skinner's operant conditional chamber, that is called Skinner box. Just he provided this box with a mouse. There is a lever, there is a food box as well, and there is signals of lights and electric grid by which the dog, the rat is suffering from like shocks. So this behavior is not natural on the rat. So operant conditioner with positive or negative reinforcements was performed in order to teach the behavior. Like we just give some stimulus to teach that to any type of animal. So that is the common which we use for uh, like to teach some animals any type of behavior, like horses, like elephants, camels, lions, which are used in the circus. So these are the terms which are used for to be to teach the behavior to those animals. So there can be in this box um, Once inside, the rat would explore the box reverently, like running here and there, but occasionally it would accidentally press this lever. When it accidentally pressed this lever, so the pellet of food would appear here from this side here in front of this. So at first the rat would ignore the liver, but later on, after some trials, the rat started to press this liver by itself. Like he's trained now to just press this liver because he knows that when he will press this liver, so the food will be, he will be provided with food. So as the animal learns by chance, that is known as trial and error learning. And here we can see in this one the positive reinforcement means the rat was avoided by food when you press the lever, and negative reinforcement that now the rat was able to turn off electric shocks produced by the floor by pressing the lever. So here there are buttons, you press the button, so these shocks will be like finished, like the electric shocks not produced at the time. So here, classical and operantal conditioning, there are some difference. Like in classical conditioning, that is involuntary and reflexive actions, like the salivation of in the dog, and these are the voluntary by themselves. And sometimes we can say the involuntary actions are also involved in that. So timing the proceeds and the response. But after the desired response, they just after the desired response, they get. So what they do, they just forget the thing. So timing of response, that is when the stimulus is done. So here there is no stimulus, so the rat just now he knows how to behave, so he just quickly run towards the lever and press the button to just have the food pellet. So like this is before the stimulus. So here it is the passive one, but here it is the active one, like he has to try lots of time. So this is done by itself. This response or this behavior is produced by itself, but that is produced by lots of trials. Next, we will see latent learning. In latent learning, Thorpe defined this association or this learning behavior in with association of different stimuli situation without patent reward, like no reward is given. So here we can have the example which is done by K.L. Lashley, the experiment of the maze. And in maze, he just put a rat, and rat was wandering um, to escape out from that, we can say from maze. So if we see here in this example, so rat is running here and there to escape from the maze, but when he just succeeded in escaping from this maze, so at the end just he got the reward. What reward? He got the food. So um, he got the food. At the time, he was not hungry. But when he was hungry, he was put again into the maze, and now he knew the way. So he quickly runs off through this, like through this maze, and then reach to the, we can say, reach to the uh, like a reward very quickly. So this is very common in human beings as well. Like if we have to move here in any place, so we don't know the paths, so we move here and there, and we get too much time to reach over there. But once we are getting towards to that place at the second time, then we will move quickly to that area, to that place, and within no time. So That is actually a latent learning. So let's talk about insight learning as well. Insight learning is very, very common in primates and apes, human beings, monkeys, chimpanzees. So that is like the use of brain, use of mind, and this is the ability to use the mind in the right path, or that is, we can say it requires a reasoning ability, and we can say that is used for the problem solving process. So here, Wolfgang Kohler, that he is having the great contribution in insightful learning. So what he did, he just kept chimpanzees in the cage, and then he hung a banana over there. So he put some boxes and some sticks over there in the cage, and this is an example of that. So that chimpanzee name he just gave Sultan, and then hungry chimpanzees are just put over there, like just enclosed in the cage. So that a chimpanzee tried unsuccessfully lots of time, but after some time just he think from the mind, and just piled up those what we can say boxes, one over the other, and then he just jump over this reach, and then he used a stick to just get banana from that. So that is it used a thinking, reasoning, and problem solving method. So like we human beings just do this process to solve a maths problem. um, so that is like the use of mind, use of brain is just going to be done in this process. This is a very common insight learning is very common in human beings as well. You can see this that in case there are chimpanzees, and how they reach over the banana, and just to feed over it. So, dear students, that all about the learning behaviors in which we have studied um, lots of behaviors which are learned by the organisms, like habituation, imprinting, classical conditioning, operant conditioning, latent conditioning, and then we are having insight learning also. Wish you all the best. That's it for today. Inshallah, we will see you in the next lecture. Allah Hafiz.